When I think about why I ever even started this channel in the first place and why I even got into tech, I always go back to the moments when I was taking apart my parents' old HP computer and then looking at each part with kind of utter amazement and just trying to figure out how it worked. And then along with the moments of when I figured out how to put it back together and then installed Windows 10 on it. Those were the moments that I knew I wanted to do something with tech one way or another. But putting together and tinkering around with PCs might be a thing of the past here in a couple of years. And that's honestly a super sad future to even consider because people might not ever get to experience one of the best hobbies in the world. Today we're going to be going through the reasons on why building a PC may become obsolete here in the future. But before we get into that, guys, only about 7% of you guys who watch my videos are subscribed. So if you do end up enjoying the video, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me out as a content creator and helps these videos get recommended to more viewers. Now, I know that it's a pretty bold claim to say that DIY PC building is dying. DIY PCs have kind of been a staple of gaming ever since gaming on a desktop was a thing, and there were ample reasons to why people were not buying a pre-built PC from companies like Acer or Dell. The main reason is cost. When you build a PC, you can put the whole thing together for about $200 less than what a pre-built system will cost you. Nowadays, building a PC is easier than I guess it's ever been, and most people with two hands and a screwdriver can watch a video on how to sit down and build a gaming PC. Now, the initial cost wasn't the only thing that led people to go and build their PC. A lot of the time when companies like Dell build a system, they will skimp out on parts like the power supply and the motherboard to save some money. As well, they will use a lot of proprietary connectors that will make any sort of like meaningful upgrade to the PC either impossible or just very difficult. Whereas when you build a PC, you have the option of what parts you want to invest a large part of the budget into and how upgradable you want the system to be. The most common recommendation when building a PC is to make sure that you invest into a good power supply and a good motherboard, because later down the line this will allow you to save some money, because the hope is that you won't have to buy a new PSU or a new motherboard and you can just slot in the new parts that you want to upgrade. This is again another reason why DIY PCs are so popular. Not only are you saving money when you buy the system initially, but you're also saving money later down the line when you want to upgrade instead of having to buy an entirely new system. Now, of course, there's the whole customization of the PC, selecting what kind of cooling you want, overclocking, and all that fun stuff. But those first 2 points are the main 2 reasons that people end up building their PCs. So what could happen to disrupt those reasons to build a gaming PC in the first place? So as a lot of you guys probably might know, the PC market is kind of hectic right now. Tariffs and supply shortages are jacking up the prices of about every component on the market. And most of the time, if people can even get their hands on a new GPU, it's probably going to cost them around $200 more than it should. And building a PC right now is just honestly a terrible idea, considering the climate that we're in. And I've been keeping a close eye on large pre-built companies in the industry. And for the most part, what I've been seeing is that their pricing is still fairly good, all things considered. Most companies have increased their cost of their systems by about $200, but honestly, sometimes they are still offering better pricing than building it yourself. So NZXT, a company that I would never really consider to be very good value, I think is a great example. The NZXT Starter Plus costs you around $900. I put together a system and PC part picker with the same specs and it came out to $1,000, $100 more than what NZXT is selling theirs for. And again, let me say that those are the exact same parts, and for every part I chose the cheapest one that I could find. And the killer with this is that the system doesn't even have the brand new graphics cards or CPUs that have been in such high scarcity. It only has an i5 9400F, which is about 2 years old at this point, and the GPU in the system is a GTX 1660 Super, which is about a year and a half old. As well, since you're buying it from NZXT, you get a warranty on the PC and they build the whole thing for you. So honestly, it doesn't really make any sense to build the whole thing yourself. Now, I know I kind of say this, but we have to reiterate this thing. There are a lot of reasons why price increases are happening. It's not just one thing. And as most of you guys know, there is a high demand for PC parts right now. And because people have been cramped in their homes and have been given some stimulus cash to spend, a lot of people have been kind of turning towards gaming. And along with that demand, there have been tariffs put in place on these products that have caused their MSRP to skyrocket. There's also very little silicon wafer supply for these companies to make their products. TSMC, the leader in silicon manufacturing right now, has a whole list of companies trying to buy as many silicon wafers as they can. Apple, AMD, Nvidia, and Intel are all trying to get a slice of the pie at TSMC. And all these things are contributing to the pricing of these parts right now. But there's kind of an inherent flaw with this argument argument that building a gaming PC might not be reasonable here in the future. And as most of you may speculate, a lot of these factors that are causing cost increases are temporary. Demand can't last forever, and at some point there will have to be enough of these parts on shelves for people to buy, which hopefully will bring down the costs. But while demand is the driving factor right now for these supply issues, pricing may not go down like you think when things get in stock. You see, a part of my daily routine is to pull up the Micro Center store page and check to see what GPUs are in stock and how much they are going for. Lately, I have been seeing a lot more RX 6000 and RTX 3000 series cards become available, and they seem to be getting a decent amount of stock in store. And just from seeing that they aren't listed as sold out within a few hours of stock being refreshed, I can safely say that at least in my community, we have hit a point where prices have definitely surpassed demand. At the point of writing this script, an MSI Gaming X Trio RTX 3070 is going for $750. Now, I know that the MSI Gaming X Trio is a fairly high-end card, and it is usually going to cost a bit more than MSRP. It has a nice cooler, and it has better stock clock speeds than the reference model. But just the fact that this card has been in stock for 5 consecutive days means that people are not willing to pay the $250 over MSRP for a card anymore. Now, why is that even important? Well, while GPUs have skyrocketed in terms of price, most other parts have also seen a price increase. Maybe not to the extent of what GPUs have gone to, but they have risen in price regardless. So when it comes to the choice of building a gaming PC or getting a pre-built PC, right now the best option is to get a pre-built. From what I have heard, the wholesale pricing of these GPUs is a bit less than what the MSRP is for the cards. So for instance, an RTX 3070, while it costs us around $700 to buy as consumers, these companies are paying around $450 to $500 a card. And when it comes to the other components that they are still buying, they're pretty close to the normal wholesale pricing. So of course, they're going to be able to get a lot better pricing for an entire system than we can actually scrounge up and build a system ourselves. And another large contributor to the fact that pre-built companies are getting way more of these GPUs than us in the DIY market is because Nvidia and AMD prioritize pre-built gaming PC sales. When it comes to hardware, you want people to correlate your brand with an experience. Most people who are going to buy a pre-built just want to have a great experience. If they can do all of their work that they need to do and play all the games that they need to play, then they're going to base their next set of computer purchases on that experience and on that machine. Companies like AMD and Nvidia benefit more from getting people who have never had their products before, buying them, and then becoming loyal customers to the brand. We like to call this in the industry mindshare. People in the DIY space or people who are looking to upgrade probably are already owning a part of that particular companies and thus having some sort of mindshare with that company. Some people are diehard Nvidia, Intel, or AMD fans, so since those people are already going to be buying from the same brand regardless, it makes much more sense to allocate your parts to new potential customers. As these companies keep getting more and more stock than us in the DIY market, there's going to be less and less GPUs and CPUs for us to buy, thus increasing the cost for the DIY community. AMD and Nvidia and Intel are all fighting for market share, and at this point, everyone is trying to grasp onto a consumer base and keep a death grip on it, because in this business, one company's gain is another company's loss. And while all these companies are fighting for mindshare, they're also fighting for something I kind of like to call wafer share. It's not really a real term, it's just, I don't know. But all processor manufacturing companies need to use fabrication facilities to create their processors. TSMC and Samsung are the two largest out there and the most technologically advanced. While TSMC is typically ahead of Samsung in terms of process technology, a lot of you have probably been hearing the term 8nm and 7nm when talking about the current series of GPUs, and this refers to the size of the transistors and the processor itself. The smaller you can make the transistors, the more you can fit into a processor, which usually in turn increases performance, and then because of the smaller diameter of the actual things that conduct electricity, you're also going to have less total power requirements in order for that chip to operate. Apple, AMD, Nvidia, and Intel are all in a bidding war against each other for as many silicon wafers that they can get their hands on at TSMC. TSMC can only produce so many wafers at a given time, so this causes scarcity in chips among their partners. This is supposedly why AMD has not been releasing more products. They can't keep up with the current demand that they already have, and they can't get more 7nm wafers to produce more CPU, GPU, and console chips. So unless TSMC doubles capacity sometime soon, or Samsung becomes as good as TSMC in their processing technology, I expect to see shortages continue into the future. And just to add to the fire, these companies are getting way more competitive with each other than ever. AMD plans to launch a new series of GPUs practically every year, and the next generation is supposed to have double the performance of what we have now. Leaks say that Nvidia is going to have a similar route for their next generation of GPUs. Intel is planning to come out with their first ever desktop GPUs along with 2 generations of CPUs in just 1 year. AMD is going to launch their next generations of CPUs in response to Intel. DDR5 memory is coming out at the end of this year. PCIe Gen 5 will be supported on Intel Alder Lake. If you thought that demand was high this year, just wait for quarters 3 and 4 of 2021. I think by that time we're going to have a very similar situation to what we've had this year. Supply shouldn't be as bad, but there will be months when people can't get their hands on the brand new stuff, even if that is just kind of the high-end stuff. And all these companies are going to prioritize pre-built companies, miners, and data centers, basically everyone except the DIY community, because these companies have so much more to gain from those groups than they could ever gain from a DIY community. Now let's move on to the topic of the US tariffs. The main functionality of tariffs is to help make foreign goods less competitive than goods created domestically, while increasing the amount of taxes that the government collects without having to raise the taxes on their citizens directly. Now, I personally think that tariffs serve a purpose on certain products, but by placing these tariffs on these kinds of products where there is no domestic competition makes basically no sense. There is no made in the USA alternative for graphics cards. For the most part, every large group that makes graphics cards is based either in Taiwan or China. So by implementing these tariffs, you're not forcing people to go with a better option, one that benefits the country as a whole, but conversely, making your citizens have to pay more and more for the goods that they want and just pocketing the money afterward. I don't think that I have to tell you that tariffs spell disaster for the PC market as a whole, since most PC components are made in China, but this spells absolute ruin for the DIY market. Companies like Dell and HP, who are American-based, build their PCs in China, and because they build the PCs in China, they don't have to pay a tariff to send a GPU from the MSI factory, which is also based in China, to the factory where they build HP computers. And because they are American-based, they're not going to have to pay as much in tariffs compared to companies like MSI or Asus to send their products to America. It's not a good situation, and I pray to God that the current administration will selectively pull back the tariffs on these computer components. And honestly, in the long run, if these tariffs don't get taken down, if demand is still relatively high, and TSMC is still having to deal with all these companies' orders, those alone could possibly kill the value proposition that building your own PC brings, and therefore killing the DIY market. I pray that I'm wrong, and I am hopeful that TSMC will find some way to turn out the needed volume for everyone, but it's going to be a hard battle to fight. Right now, the most we can honestly do is to write to our elected representatives telling them that these tariffs on our hardware only hurts us. If you have any opinions, comments, or questions about this video, make sure to leave those down in the comment section below. I'll try to get to as many as I possibly can. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one. The script was a lot of fun to write, but also a lot of work, so if you did enjoy, hitting that like button really helps me out a lot. And if you want to see more content like this, consider hitting that subscribe button. I have some really cool content planned for this month with some gaming PC reviews, so again, if you're interested in that sort of thing, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification button. Thanks so much for stopping by, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Peace.